Ever start a painting and the canvas turns against you? One touch and you know this surface is a disaster. Paint skates, nothing sticks. Everything fights you. So I stopped, reset, and I'm taking you with me to show how to regain control. Force the canvas to cooperate. I start paintings in different ways, sometimes transferring a sketch, sometimes diving in with a brush. For complex pieces like this, I draw directly on the canvas and seal it with an alcohol-based fixative, so it doesn't smudge. To reduce the canvas absorbency, I usually start by applying an imprimatura. Acrylic gesso tends to be very thirsty, which makes smooth blending difficult, so laying down a lead white imprimatura creates the first true oil layer on top of the acrylic and completely changes how the surface behaves. To ensure it spreads evenly, I first rub on a thin coat of linseed oil, let it sit for a moment, and then wipe off the excess, leaving only a subtle film that helps the paint glide without streaking. For the mixture itself, I use flake white and Van Dyke brown, a deep warm pigment that lightens into a soft gray, perfect for knocking down the harsh white of the canvas. This toned layer not only calms the glare of pure gesso, but also sets up a more controlled, forgiving foundation for all the layers that follow. The sky was the first challenge. I wanted cool blues above and warm sunset tones below, but adding white would cool the mix too much. Naples yellow light solved that by lightening and warming the blue. Though its transparency lets the imprimatura influence the final tone. When I need stronger opacity, I mix my own warm light yellow from lead white, cad yellow deep and touch of red. But for now, Naples works. For the cow skull's horns, the shadow values are very dark and shadows need transparency. That's what gives depth and air. Highlights, by contrast, need opacity to sit boldly on the surface and create volume. For the shadow, I use ultramarine blue with burnt umber, a naturally transparent mix that lets the imprimatura show through. It's harder to control, so I block it in loosely and refine later. The same applies inside the skull. Transparent shadows using the same mix, sometimes warmed with transparent oxide red or thinned with a bit of oleogel. Transparency adds beauty and also challenge. After that, I move on to the lid side of the skull, which brings a completely different set of decisions. The light areas might look white, but they are actually shaped by the environment around them. Warm reflections rising from the ground and cooler tones drifting in from above. And because I used Naples yellow light in the sky, it made sense to use it here too, tying the entire color harmony together. Again, the problem is its transparency. So instead of painting every tiny crack and ridge a la prima, I laid down a thin light base and let the drawing show through, keeping the imprimatura's glow alive. Once that foundation dried slightly, I could return to carve out the small texture, shifting edges and subtle planes that give the skull its character. Working dark details over a light base can be difficult, but with decisive, confident strokes, the values stay strong. And when the lights get in the way, I simply wipe them back with a fingertip or my silicone-tipped tool to reopen the shadows. This layered approach not only gives me more control, but also creates a richer, more atmospheric surface. Yeah, it's slower than painting everything in one go, but the depth it produces is worth every extra step, believe me. Before we continue, just a quick note. If you'd like to dive deeper into my painting process, see full-length tutorials, or access my books and behind-the-scenes materials, you can join me on Patreon. There are over 100 videos and a ton of extra resources waiting for you there, and I'm adding new content all the time. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe here on YouTube so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. The Patreon link is in the description. Check it out if you'd like to take your paintings to the next level. Alright, back to the video. What gave me the most trouble was the mountain in the background. Because it sits so far in the distance, atmospheric perspective cools the tones and shifts the shadows toward the blue or violet. I started with a classic mix, ultramarine blue and burnt umber to reduce saturation. Then alizarin crimson to push the hue toward violet. And added a bit of aloe rest gel to speed up drying. But that was a big mistake. All three pigments are naturally transparent, and the medium made the mixture even more transparent, slippery and streaky. Blending became nearly impossible. I wipe it off and try it again, this time block it in like an underpainting. But the result looked dull and messy, and worst of all, it completely buried my original drawing, meaning I would redraw the rock structure from scratch. The paint still behaved poorly, too transparent, poorly absorbed, visually chaotic. So I wipe it off a second time. Third time's the charm. I changed my palette and replaced the transparent alizarin with a Venetian red, much more opaque, more saturated, and offering far better coverage. Instantly, things improved. For the lighting, I skipped the Naples yellow light and reached for lead white instead, which gave the mixture opacity, grip, and a smooth, responsive feel. To finish, I adjusted the medium to turpentine with a touch of Damer varnish, just enough to give the paint more body without making it too fat. Finally, the paint worked with me instead of against me. And moments like this are the real truth of painting. It is trial and error, course correction, and choosing the right materials for the job. The highlights reels online rarely show the struggle behind the scenes, yet it's exactly these decisions, the pigments, the mediums, the solvents that shape the final outcome. Painting isn't magic, but when everything finally clicks, it can feel pretty close. And that is all for today, my mates. Before you go, take a look at the matemerch.com. It's where I keep all my merch, books, prints and stickers, basically the best way to support what I do. Thanks my mates for being here, see you in the next video, bye bye.